Remember that the coaching search was supposed to be done early June, right? Well, look at the calendar. Good morning to you. Good Monday morning. I'm Dejan Kovacevic of DK Pittsburgh Sports. This is Daily Shot of Penguins. It comes your way bright and early every weekday. If you're into football and or baseball, I also offer daily shots of Steelers and Pirates in the same place that you found this. There are two, count them, 2 NHL teams still searching for a head coach. Here's a hint, they both wear black and gold. I don't care about the Bruins, and I'm going to guess neither do you. But Kyle Dubas and the Penguins are still looking, still interviewing by every account, including our own reporting at DK Pittsburgh Sports. That said, indications are very, very strong that Mitch Love, assistant coach in Washington, is the front runner, if you want to label it that way, among the various candidates, and he's been one of those who's been summoned to Pittsburgh for a straight-up interview. Now, I got to tell you, I've looked into a bunch of these guys. I've even looked into some of the available retreads, wondering if there's some merit to going down that road, even though I don't really like it. I've looked into guys who are still competing in the Stanley Cup playoffs, or even were competing in the playoffs through the conference finals. But then I look at Love's resume and Love's background, and even, this is going to sound ageist or whatever, but at his relative youth, he's 40 years old, I don't really feel like I have to go a whole lot further. I do get that Dubas wants to cast his wide net, but I also get that the Penguins aren't the only team looking. Just as I get that the Penguins have a kind of a different framework for what this job would entail than maybe Boston or Seattle, which addressed its vacancy over the weekend by bringing in Lane Lambert. But then there's Love, and if you go through his list of his pluses or even his potential minuses, and I'll explain that in a moment, everything just feels right. Which franchise, for example, is the one that the Penguins have been most openly, outwardly discussing as a model for how to make it through these next 2, 3, 4 years? It's been the Capitals. They didn't have to dispense with Alexander Ovechkin, or for that matter with John Carlson or any of their other main veteran guys. They just built up their farm system in a big way, brought those kids along, did a bunch of winning in Hershey, and next thing you know, Ovechkin's flying around like it's 10 years ago. Why? Because he's got a supporting cast that allows him to do that. Really good drafts, really good acquisitions of other teams' youngsters, and on top of that, some really smart overall ads like Jacob Chychrun. Well, who out of these candidates would be better equipped or would have had a closer up view of how to make that meshing happen, how to still respect a living legend while he's, setting the all-time goal-scoring record and all that other stuff than somebody who was right there on the Washington bench working with Spencer Carberry. Love also has a reputation of being both mindful of and genuinely eager for any and all information that's available. And that's what a modern GM wants to hear in the NHL. They don't want to hear that you're going to put up with the advanced analytics. They don't want to hear that you'll listen to it, but ... They want somebody who actually wants what it is that you're producing, what you and your team are producing, meaning your team of analytics people. Now then there's experience. If you haven't been an NHL head coach, you can't pretend that you've been an NHL head coach. But Love, in addition to his time in Washington, spent 2 years as the head of the Flames AHL affiliate. He was the league's coach of the year both times. He also was a head coach for 3 years in the Western League in Saskatoon, Saskatchewan. But out of all of that, I feel best about the time that he has spent in Washington. There is no league like the NHL. There is no supplanting that experience. And last, and again, I'm going to say this might be a minus for some people. It sure isn't for me. Love never played in the NHL. And you're going to have to take my word for this, or, by the way, the word of somebody who actually played in the NHL for this. Not everybody who hasn't made it to the NHL is respected once they arrive as a head coach or even as an assistant coach. I've told you before the story about Tom Barrasso refusing to take practice shots from one of the assistant coaches the Penguins had because that assistant coach had never made it to the NHL, so he doesn't deserve to take. Okay, yeah, that's a Barrasso story and a half, right? But that sentiment does exist, and not just among people with Barrasso's personality. In Love's case, though, he was in the minor leagues for a long time, and even though his stature in his playing days was 6'0", 175, he had 901 penalty minutes in the 5 seasons he was in the WHL. In one of those years of junior hockey, he fought 40 times. In one of his seasons in the AHL, he fought 34 times. Now, here again, someone can be inclined to say, wow, who wants a cement head? I mean, this is about the modern league, which is fast and skilled. And of course, again, analytical. But I'm sorry, if I can find somebody who's got a mix of being able to think the game at an NHL level to being able to think the game at a level that's right along with the available data and available thought processes that go into the modern NHL, and they're okay with knocking somebody's block off, I'm all right with that. Listen, the fact that he didn't make it to the NHL, if you want to look at it in a weird context, could actually be a positive. His hunger to succeed, his hunger to reach the top, to get to the Stanley Cup, the one thing that every hockey player and every head coach and assistant coach and everybody else aspires to achieve would be that much greater in theory. And I'm not saying that I'm down on other candidates or whatever, but the names that have been out there don't do much for me. Jay Woodcroft, look, if they thought he was the answer in Edmonton, you wouldn't be looking at Chris Knobloch there now. DJ Smith had his chance in Ottawa, didn't do much for it. There's a couple other names also don't do much for me. Maybe there's a surprise. Maybe there's a European candidate that we haven't heard about to date. But this one's just sitting there. It's begging to be the choice. When we come back, J1Q. This episode is brought to you by Bet Online, your number one source for all your sports needs this season, from Major League Baseball, golf, NHL, NBA playoffs. Get the latest odds and lines, including all team matchups, player props, odds on just about everything that's out there. Head to the website today or use your mobile device to get in on the action. Bet Online, where the game starts. Today's J1Q comes from Mary, who says, oh, DK, to be a tough, physical hockey team like the Panthers. I really miss that with the Penguins. What I'd give to see some butt-kicking tough guy hop over the boards to protect Sidney Crosby or even just to finish a check. Help me, DK, to see why the Penguins have become so soft. Oh, I mean, you can call it soft, Mary. I've had my own issues as it relates to the Penguins' lack of physicality for some time. And that's partly because it was so unevenly applied. The same organization that employed the head coach that didn't want anybody wasting their time or their energy or their rink positioning to go and finish a check because there was something more valuable that could have been done elsewhere on the ice to get the puck back, also went and added Brandon Tanev and saw what Tanev could do. And up until Ron Hextall exposed that he has no idea what he's doing in an expansion draft, among other areas, that was respected. What Tanev did here was respected. He chased hits. He really did. But the hits themselves made a difference, a visible, tangible, not in our imagination difference. But going beyond that, the intangible effect is that they'd kind of wake everybody up a little bit when that was needed. The past 2 seasons, really more than any other in recent years, Mike Sullivan had players that he, and maybe he alone, considered to be physical and useful. His definition of that was that they would be really, really, really tough on 50-50 pucks, and that they would kick somebody's, how did you put it here, their butt-kicking tough guy hopping over the boards to win a 50-50 puck. His other definition of toughness is lying down to block shots, which probably explains why most people, myself included, for a long time now have kind of put one eyebrow up whenever we would hear Sullivan refer specifically to Noel Acciari as Warrior. That became a thing in the locker room too. He signed for another year, incidentally. He's not going anywhere. Because when I would think of Warrior, first of all, I would think of the guy that they would call that before Acciari arrived, and that was Patrick Hornqvist, and it was really, really, really obvious why he was called that. But I also think of somebody who's physically, aggressively making something happen, up to and including waking up the crowd, his teammates, everybody involved. That creates energy. That energy creates confidence. That confidence creates results. The results create identity, and the identity swings right back to the beginning of that assembly line. I've always understood why Sullivan wanted to play the way that he did. I've always respected him as a person, as a coach, and what he hoped to achieve on the ice, because when it did work, it worked. But Mary, I'm a lot like you, and this has never changed on my front. When I see teams playing the way that Florida does, when I see that now viral clip of Paul Maurice admonishing his guys to wear the opponent's defenseman down to the point that they don't even want to participate in a Game 6 or a Game 7, that's hockey. That's always been hockey. That's not going to go away as hockey. You can still want to have the puck. You can still battle for the puck. You can still engage in stick checks and stick lifts and poke checks and whatever else gets you the puck, but you can do it by delivering body checks, and you can make body checks part of the game again, part of your game, part of Pittsburgh's game. Again, I'm sorry, but there isn't a world where you can walk into an NHL locker room as a head coach and tell everybody, we need you to be physical. We need you to be physical. And then tell them that body checking is not the way you want that to occur. That doesn't make sense. There's just not going to be any connection there. I appreciate the question. I appreciate everybody listening to Daily Shot of Penguins. We'll be back with another one of these tomorrow.